For years, the internet crowned Pedro Pascal something close to a saint. Then, almost overnight, the same people who called him daddy started telling him to go away. It happened fast, it happened publicly, and it happened to a man who had waited over 2 decades just to be recognized on the street. But what came next is the part nobody expected. A completely unrelated comedian stepped in, said something so blunt it stopped the entire conversation, and predicted, by name, exactly who the internet would turn on next. He was right. Here is the whole story. To understand why the backlash hit as hard as it did, you have to understand just how long Pedro Pascal waited for any of this at all. He spent close to 23 years working before most people could pick his face out of a lineup. Guest spots on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, small roles on NYPD Blue and The Good Wife, years of off-Broadway theater that paid rent and nothing more. He was born in Santiago, Chile, to parents who were political refugees, fleeing the country as infants after the Pinochet regime targeted his family. He built an entire acting career in relative anonymity, taking whatever came his way for over 2 decades without a single role that made his name mean anything to a stranger. Even after his first real breakthrough, recognition came slowly and unevenly. In an interview given around age 41, Pascal described the strange, disorienting texture of early fame, being spotted on a London street by strangers who almost, but not quite, got his name right, someone calling out Pascal Pedro before catching themselves. He talked about the years of scraping by on television guest spots and theater work, saying the smallest opportunities were what kept him going, that he had resolved to keep struggling until he physically could not anymore. That is not the mindset of someone who expected overnight stardom. It is the mindset of someone who had made peace with never getting it at all. Then in 2014, at 38 years old, HBO cast him as Oberyn Martell in Game of Thrones. He auditioned on an iPhone, in selfie mode, reading Tyrion Lannister's lines from A Storm of Swords because that was the only version of the audition material he had access to. The role lasted 4 episodes and ended in one of the most brutal death scenes in television history. It was enough. Narcos followed almost immediately, casting him as DEA agent Javier Peña across 3 seasons of one of Netflix's first true global hits. Then The Mandalorian in 2019, then The Last of Us in 2023, playing Joel Miller, a smuggler raising a teenage girl who is not his daughter through a collapsed world. Somewhere in that stretch, the internet decided who he was. Not just a talented working actor who had finally broken through, but something warmer and stranger. The internet's daddy, a meme-friendly, cardigan-wearing, endlessly likable older brother figure that an entire generation of fans adopted almost overnight. He leaned into it, a little uncomfortably at first, once joking on a red carpet that yes, fine, he was everyone's cool, slutty daddy. The label followed him everywhere. It was, for a while, the best press any actor could ask for. And then it flipped. By the fall of 2025, Pascal was appearing in an almost overwhelming volume of major projects at once. The Mandalorian and Grogu. The Fantastic Four. First steps as Reed Richards, stepping into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Last of Us Season 2. Materialists, freaky tales, endless press tours stacked on top of each other, each one putting his face in front of audiences again and again within the same few months. What had once read as a hard-working actor finally getting his due started reading, to a growing number of people online, as oversaturation. The complaints started small. He is in everything. I am tired of seeing him. Then they stopped being small. If you're finding this story as wild as we do, this is a great time to subscribe. We track the real stories behind Hollywood's biggest names every single week, and the next part of this one is the reason it's worth telling at all. The backlash became loud enough that it stopped being a fringe complaint and started being an actual entertainment news story. Some observers pointed to what looked like a coordinated pile-on. Others said the criticism was simply overblown, a natural reaction to genuine overexposure rather than anything personal. Pascal himself, by most accounts, remained largely unbothered publicly, continuing to work, continuing to promote his projects, including his upcoming film De Noche, where he stepped into a role opposite Danny Ramirez after Joaquin Phoenix dropped out. but somebody else noticed and decided to say something about it. Pete Davidson, appearing on the podcast this past weekend with Theo Von, brought up Pascal completely unprompted while talking about the mechanics of modern fame. What he said next became the headline. He described the exact arc, almost beat for beat. 2 years ago, Davidson said, Pascal was just a hard-working, great actor who had been struggling for years. Then he blew up, hard, and everyone was saying, "Daddy, Daddy, yeah, Daddy," in that adoring, meme-soaked way the internet does. Then, Davidson said, a year later, he is in everything because he is hot and in demand, and now everyone is saying, "Go away, dude." He did not stop at diagnosing the pattern. He got angry about it. "What the actual hell," he said, essentially. You have to give someone time to adjust to that level of fame. He talked about how disorienting it actually is. The small things people do not think about. Someone tapping you on the shoulder in public, being recognized every single time you try to grab coffee, having to relearn how to exist in the world once millions of people suddenly know your face. He argued that the entire culture has built a machine that builds people up loudly and then tears them down even faster, and that nobody seems willing to admit how ugly that cycle actually is while it's happening to someone in real time. Then Davidson did something that made the moment even bigger than a single defense. He predicted who was next. He named Walton Goggins specifically, an actor riding his own wave of momentum off an Emmy-nominated turn in The White Lotus, and said, almost matter-of-factly, that the internet was going to do the exact same thing to him within months. Practically a threat and a prophecy in the same breath. Goggins responded publicly, on Instagram, taking the prediction in stride. He thanked Davidson for the heads-up, joked that he and Davidson agreed on one thing, and then delivered his own tribute to Pascal directly, writing that Pedro Pascal is not just a good man, he is a great man. What makes this whole sequence so interesting is not just that Davidson defended a colleague. It is that he correctly diagnosed something the entire internet does now, on a schedule, to almost everyone who gets famous fast. Build them up as an underdog. Fall in love with the story of their overnight success. Watch them actually succeed. Watch them show up in the projects that success earns them. And then, almost like clockwork, punish them for exactly the thing that made people love them in the first place. Working, being in demand, showing up. Pascal, for his part, appears to have simply kept moving. He remains attached to major franchise work, continues to take smaller independent films that interest him creatively, and has said very little publicly about the backlash itself, letting other people fight that particular battle on his behalf. Whether that is genuine indifference or simply the instinct of a man who spent 23 years being ignored and therefore has a completely different relationship to criticism than someone who found fame overnight is something only he really knows. What is clear is this. The internet turned on him fast, exactly the way Davidson described it, Daddy to go away within roughly a year. And then, just as fast, someone with no personal stake in the outcome stood up in public and said the quiet part out loud, that the whole cycle is broken, that it happens to almost everyone, and that it was already coming for the next person in line. He was right. It's Walton Goggins' turn now. That is the real story behind the backlash and the unlikely defense that turned it into something bigger. If you want more breakdowns like this one, the next video is already waiting for you. Go watch it now. We will see you there.